Hi there. I've made this little video today because many of you have expressed some frustration about the elusive Chaturanga that we do in our yoga practice. And when we are doing our Chaturanga, there are several muscles that are working all at one time. And if we can bring our awareness to those muscle recruitments, then we will move into that flow a little bit easier with more success. So instead of demonstrating the Chaturanga on the floor, which is where we normally practice it, I'm set up here on our little shelf in the studio, and you can use the edge of your countertop in your kitchen, maybe a table edge if that's safe, or any other surface that's raised up off of the ground. So let's first talk about some of the muscles that we're using when we're doing the lowering down to the floor and pushing back up again. In a traditional push-up, we have the hands turned in slightly and the elbows bent out. And that's great for strengthening our chest muscles, which we want to do. It also uses some of these bicep muscles, right? However, when we do that, it tends to put more torque on the shoulders. And so if you're used to doing normal push-ups, it's going to feel very different to do more of a yoga push-up, which looks a lot like a military push-up. In our yoga push-up, our hands stay parallel to each other, and as our arms come back, we keep our elbows right next to our sides, like that. And what that does is put almost zero torque on the rotator cuff, keeping our shoulders much, much safer. So you can practice just anytime when you're sitting or standing, just practicing drawing the elbows in and back and feeling what that is like all the way through that backward shape. So all the way forward and then all the way back. Just noticing that versus this. Because when we're in the moment and the pressure of lowering ourselves down, we want to really ingrain that hugging sensation. Okay, and then in addition to that, we're using some depressing movements of the back actually to keep our shoulders down. So another common thing that happens is when we get our arms out here and we end up in a plank position, then we end up just sort of in a protective manner of hugging our shoulders up towards our ears. Okay, so to depress the shoulders, we use not just the shoulders, but that motion actually comes from down here on our backs. Those are called our latissimus dorsi muscles, or our back muscles. So you can actually hold on to your sides and practice pushing the shoulders down like that, pushing them down, and you'll feel these muscles turn on down here. So that's what's happening when we end up in a plank position, is you're recruiting from all the way down in here to get the shoulders to stay low. And then also we want to use these core muscles, these transverse abdominal muscles. We can recruit as low into our pelvic floor muscles if we want to, if we're really paying attention and hugging up and in into those lower belly muscles. But at a very minimum, let's think about keeping the shoulders down, and then we're going to be practicing lowering our elbows next to us. When we're on the floor, this is challenging because gravity has its full access to the whole front of our body. So one thing you can do to make this a bit easier is to find yourself a countertop, or the edge of your bed is another place, but it's a little maybe too soft, I think. And in here at the studio, we've got this nice bench. It's about the same height as a low countertop. So if I position myself on the edge of a surface, then I can practice first feeling this motion of rather than having my shoulders and my ears, dropping them down. So that's one really important key. And then I can also practice feeling my abdominal muscles pull in, right? And for some of you who are really struggling, you may just want to practice holding this to start and not even worry about lowering down, building up that sustaining endurance. The next step would be to practice tiny, and I say tiny, micro elbow bends. Don't worry about going all the way down into it. See if you can master that first movement of hugging in and keeping the shoulders depressed at the same time. Now you're going to feel this really strong in the back of your arms. So if you've wanted to tone up the back of your arms, you're in the right place for this. Okay, I'm going to get a little closer. So again, we're hugging down and keeping those elbows right in next to our sides. You can also do this if this is too much. Go to the wall and do it on the wall. Stand on your toes and keep your body in one straight line and practice lowering and in. Okay? Once you get better at that, you can start lowering a little farther in and a little farther out. If you start to notice at some point you start to collapse because you're not quite strong enough in that deeper experience, then pause and push back out. So it's like you're finding that edge and then coming out, and then finding the edge and then coming out. And you're doing that not in one day's time, but maybe over a week, 2 weeks, 5 weeks. It's a process. When you eventually decide to get down onto the floor and do it on a regular basis on the floor, the same muscles are recruited. There's just a little bit more of a gravitational pull. And that pushing up, when you decide to come back up off of the floor or even here, make sure you're really drawing in from your low belly, because the tendency is to sag. And there's a snaking motion sort of out of that. So instead, on the floor, I recommend you lift the low belly first, kind of lift the hips a little bit, and then push off. That would be more like this. Lift the hips a little bit, and then push off. Right? Down. Instead of sagging your pelvis, lift the hips a little bit, and then push back. So step by step, you can inch your way into a more complete Chaturanga experience. I didn't include that lifting into the cobra. One really important thing about keeping the shoulders down is that once you get into that lowest position here, then my shoulders are already down. I don't have to do anything really huge to get myself up into cobra, right? So recruiting those muscles first on the front end will make it easier for you to lift into that cobra. Okay, keep going to your classes, keep practicing at home, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm Emily Van Eman. My email address is headtotoes, to spell it out, headtotoes@gmail.com, and we're here at the Shift Studio. See you again soon.